With ArtFight season coming up, there's going to be, I think, an influx of ArtFight discussions, prep, last minute stuff. So before the season begins, I did want to do one more video on ArtFight for specifically beginners and some of the tips that I think are important to note, especially for first-time art fighters or just general beginner artists. Things that I think I wish I knew going into ArtFight for the first time. So, as much as I love to discuss ArtFight and recommend it to basically everyone, one of the realities of joining ArtFight for the first time or being a beginner art fighter on the website is, for the most part, people aren't going to attack you as much. At least for me, the first 2 years of ArtFight were really, really slow. So even though I was attacking people pretty semi-regularly, I didn't get much in return. And it's important to note especially that ArtFight is not an art exchange or an art trading game, but more of a art gifting game. So while you can attack people, it's important to note that you shouldn't be internalizing that you're going to be getting something back. As much as that is a bummer, that's just kind of one of the truths to it. And I think one of the ways to combat ArtFight scarcity, and one of the things that really helped me out, was inviting friends. This can be online or real life friends, artists that you're acquainted with, but I think they really does make a difference having connections early on. And even though I didn't get a lot of attacks from different artists, I invited my cousin onto ArtFight around the same time that I started, and that made a lot of a difference, because even though I wasn't exactly getting a lot of attacks generally, I was still able to interact with someone and enjoy the season from a smaller perspective. Just like I've said in my last few videos on ArtFight, networking is so important. If you have mutuals, if you have somebody who is into art, I highly recommend inviting them to ArtFight and doing casual exchanges with them. And it makes the season less lonely. As you progress through the years, I think you kind of naturally build an array of ArtFight friends. And at least in my case, there's ones that I attack every year, just built on the experiences I've had with them. And sometimes it's going to take time, and especially if you are a beginner artist or first-time art fighter, as I've said before, I do think you might want to network first. And if you are worried about not really getting attacks, join the ArtFight Discord and look for people targeting beginner artists or first-time art fighters, because there are people out there. Signing up for Hitlists is also, I think, a really good option. Attack scarcity is just kind of normal, and it's not the fault of yourself. But like, if you're not putting yourself out there, it's really, really difficult to get very far in terms of receiving attacks. This is one of the things that I really didn't know how to do. A lot of people don't actually know how to search up other artists' pages. At least I didn't for a while. It wasn't until I think a year or two ago where I was like, oh wait, that's kind of how you do it. Whenever you go onto your profile, there's like that little squiggly line and then your username. So the easiest way to search up an artist's profile is to take out your username in that webpage and instead paste the artist's username in there instead. It doesn't really have to be capitalized as far as I'm aware. As long as you have all of the correct characters in order and everything, it should direct you to that artist's page. I'm sure I'll have like a visual example of it because I'm not a great explainer of this. I just think it's really helpful when looking for other artists. For a while I just kind of like copied pages and pasted them in before I realized it was really just that simple. So that's how you find other people's ArtFight pages. So this one is a little bit of a mix of both. I mentioned this before in my ArtFight prep video, but I think I need to mention it again just in case. I really need to cement that in there. If you are a first-time art fighter, don't start your attacks yet. Don't do sketches, don't do anything besides prep for your characters specifically. And while you're at it, I think it's also really important to read all of the rules for attacks, doing attacks, that general stuff. Because over the years, I've seen a lot of people talk about doing their attacks early, and I'm just like, no, don't do that. As I've said before, not only is it bad sportsmanship, and the point of ArtFight is to be confined to that short amount of time, but it's also, you know, against the rules, and in worst cases, if they do find out about it, you can get banned for it. And it's best to not risk it, and if you are really motivated to be doing stuff for ArtFight, I think it's best to focus on just your characters and preparing stuff for them. I know, I get really giddy during pre-ArtFight season, but don't do it. Don't do it. And in general, read the rules. And if you don't know if it's against the rules or not, it's better to just check, because you never know. This one happened to me in maybe like the first year of ArtFight, maybe the second year too, but my memory is really fuzzy. It's common for during the first week of ArtFight, the site to go down. Usually this is because of the influx of people being on the site at the same time, and while I think they've fixed that a lot over the past 2 years and I haven't had any problems with getting onto the site, beginning and during like maybe even the end of ArtFight, keep a hit list on a separate document. This can be through Discord, Google Docs, Notes. Just keep the link or even just the name of the characters, their ID, and the creator themselves, so that way you can paste them into ArtFight and be able to submit your attack even while the site is really slow. And, you know, making hit lists in general, I think, is really nice in order to organize what you want to do in terms of order, and that's worked out pretty well for me, but again, I haven't had much trouble with the site being slow. It's better to be safe than sorry. Always be ready for ArtFight to be slow. And with the amount of people that I've been seeing coming to ArtFight this year specifically, I do think there is going to be a lot of people on the site first week. Make that hit list, save your characters that you want to attack in some place, basically. And I've made a video on just basic etiquette when it comes to attacks, receiving them, and all of that stuff. But it's important to note that everyone participating in this is in some way an artist, and to treat those people with respect as much as you want to be respected. This is supposed to be an event to bring other people together. It's best to just be polite, generally, while participating in this event, because it is for artists, made by artists. I've never had much trouble with this either, but as far as I'm aware, there's a lot of folks who have had very negative experiences recently. If you get an attack, just leave a comment, recognize the artist. I've heard the past year or two that there's been a lot of people ignoring attacks for their quality, and I don't really have to explain much besides that that's kind of a really disrespectful thing to do. Just be nice. That's all I really have to say on it. I have a whole video. I'll probably be linking all of my ArtFight stuff in the description for you to find, but I think I just needed to talk about it a little bit again. And this last one I've always had a little bit of trouble with, just because it's hard to identify what my art is worth. But in terms of grading attacks, I think it's easy to say that because you're doing the gradings yourself, you should be grading your art fairly and not doing it for like the maximum amount of points. If you feel like your art is not at a specific quality, don't put it at that, and do it just for the points, I guess, in that case. I think generally ArtFight is best enjoyed when not thinking about the points all that much, and more the experience that you're giving for yourself and for the artist receiving the attack. It's entirely selected by you, and there's some form of basic etiquette to think about when grading your own attacks. And this last one is more of a me thing, and I've only really had negative experiences with it very recently, and by recently I mean like the past 3 years or so, I think my biggest form of advice for this is don't open ARTTOK. I feel like especially in Vampires versus Werewolves, there was a lot of really mean-spirited people on ARTTOK during that time and during ArtFight season. There was a lot of negative discourse, and because of it, I think it was really demotivating that season, and in turn, it caused a lot of people to instead leave ArtFight and then have negative experiences with it and discourage people joining. It's not great over there. If you're participating for the first time, or the first few times, it's best to take a little bit of a break from ARTTOK and to focus on other websites or social media platforms. It's for the better. I did that last year and I had a much better experience than the year previous, where I was still active on ARTTOK during the time that ArtFight season was on. One of the issues with it is people on there make problems bigger than they actually are, so it seems like this is happening a lot more to people when it really, really isn't. So, if you're steering clear of ARTTOK for the most part during ArtFight, I think your experience is genuinely going to be much better. ArtTikTok is really interesting, and it's more interesting how they view ArtFight as an event. So yeah, this is all of my beginner ArtFighter tips and just general advice. If you have any for beginner artists or first-time ArtFighters yourself, the comments section is always up for discussion, for questions, for answers, all of that neat stuff. If you do have any extra questions about anything on the platform, I can try with the best of my ability to answer them, and I love yapping, especially about ArtFight, so, Of course, if you also want to drop your ArtFight usernames in the description too, to try and get new mutuals or to meet other ArtFighters, you can also do that in the description. Plug your stuff in there. That's all. Bye!